In this corner, standing at 6'5", weight class unknown, but hailing from the city of sin, put your hands together for Jamieson Welsh. And in this corner, standing at 5'10", weighing in at pounds, and coming to us from his super secret bunker with no AC in Tucson, Arizona, put your hands together for Luis Montemayor.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Mixed Company Podcast. Of course, I'm one half of the show, Jamieson Welsh, as always, joined by Luis. And Luis, what's going on, man? It's been an eventful 2 weeks and change. What's going on?
Jameson, I am stoked to be back on the mic for episode 28. Still celebrating spooky season. I'm a little sleep deprived. I had a double feature of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Nightmare on Elm Street. So I don't think I'm sleeping with the lights off for the rest of this month, possibly.
You really get scared of scary movies?
No. How about this? Not typically, but you know, when you watch a couple in a row and you turn off the lights and like the fridge makes a noise, you're like, well, what the hell is that? So you know, typically not, but you know, it's how about this? I watch scary movies all year. They hit different when it's in October. So
yeah. I get it.
Plus I live in the ghetto, so it's always dangerous outside no matter what.
That's fair.
But no, man, yeah. Really excited to be back on the show here, talking some boxing news. Let's get into it. But first, I want to thank our sponsor, Delightful Smoke Shop in Tucson, Arizona, for sponsoring the news segment. Check them out at 62170 22nd Street. And mark your calendars for Saturday, November 15th, because they will be having their third annual car show extravaganza at 5 p.m. on site. So I'll be there, most likely with our producer, Jabari Davis, as well. So I'm pretty stoked. So thanks to Delightful Smoke Shop for the sponsorship and for getting us noticed on the car show. But yeah, let's see. This past weekend, so we have been working with a platform called Millions.co, official partner of 19 Media Group, our network. And we've actually been doing some interviews with some fighters thanks to their help. And they were behind a pay-per-view for Danny Garcia versus Daniel Gonzalez this past Saturday. Danny Garcia, this was supposed to be his big farewell to Brooklyn. Turns out the fight ended with a Garcia knockout in the fourth round with a killer hook. And Danny's already saying, well, I probably got another fight in me. You know, a lot of big talk about retirement, but, you know, you get a taste of success. It's kind of like what we said about our boy, you said about our boy Manny Pacquiao. Competitive fight keeps him fighting, kind of brings him back into the ring. What is that feeling of like? It must be that like I said, that taste of the success that you just can't let go of. Fighters can't let go of. I don't know. What do you think about this trend of fighters?
Well, a big part of it is usually guys retire at the end when it's over. When it's over. I don't like the farewell to Brooklyn though. Danny's a Philly fighter. I know he fought a lot of fights in Brooklyn, but he would have sold out Philly, or at least did like 12 or 13,000 in Philly. Mm-hmm. I don't know if the venue was available. I don't know all the details about that. I know it is basketball and football season, so it might be a little bit more difficult than normal. However, with that being said, I would prefer that fight being in Philly personally, but that's here or there. Fighters fight until they can't. So if a fighter feels like he still has something, he's going to fight for a lot of reasons. One, that's what they do. That's what they know. So that's what you know. That's what you do. You're going to keep doing it until you can't no more. Also, the money. There's a check out there. They're going to get that check. And he's one of the few guys out there that has some name recognition. For off name alone, he could probably get $500,000 just to be on someone's card. Maybe $1 million just because. And those things count. And especially in an economy that's kind of tough right now, I don't blame anyone for trying to get that check if they can get it.
That's fair. And, you know, he's still obviously got name recognition. He's still got some heat on his name. And yeah, I mean, if it went the distance and, you know, maybe he kind of won a split decision majority, I could understand maybe him saying like, well, I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to say my goodbyes. But you got a fourth round knockout and, you know, they play all this stuff over and over in the social media. You know, I bet you get hyped up and you're like, yeah, let's do that shit again. I can't really, I mean, you know, I've only ever done sparring with friends, but that adrenaline rush is no joke. It is not. You can't deny the motivation of that adrenaline rush of you know, throwing some punches, not dying after getting hit in the face. For me specifically, that's probably like the biggest W I took is leaving the gym on my feet when I was doing that shit. But yeah, I mean, the only thing about it is that of course, what I was doing had its own level of danger, but getting into a ring, that is also no joke. That is people are putting their lives at risk every time they get on there. So, hopefully, with our fighters that are getting up there in age, they're not putting themselves in that kind of position where something tragic might happen. Knock on wood.
Right.
But speaking of millions, by the way, so they were kind enough to set up some interviews for us. Well, for me specifically, because there's only one host at a time. So I was very grateful for them. I was able to talk to a couple of guys. One of them named Jahan Ingram, nicknamed the Boogeyman. The other guy named The Dedication, Daniel Bailey Jr. Awesome guys. Really cool time talking to them. It was a lot of fun. So those interviews, actually, they're exclusively either on millions.co. Our show is on there, video uploaded every time we record an episode, or on YouTube. We have a playlist on 19 Media Group's channel, so I would encourage you to check those out. Leave it a like, give it a comment if there are other questions, because we do want to keep doing this with fighters. If there's questions that you think you want to learn from a professional fighter, because these are pros, please let us know. Here's a little taste of what my interview with Daniel Bailey. Let's say you've got a young kid who is getting into boxing, a teenager, and is really dedicated and loves it. What steps would that kid have to take to get something more serious?
Learn from everybody. When you're a boxer at a gym, you got guys who've been pro for years. You got guys who've been through what you're going through. So ask those guys for advice and just learn from it. Learn from their mistakes, because they're going to tell you what they wish they would have done and things that you should do immediately.
Awesome. What a great and handsome interviewer that was. But yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. And also, there's a lot of things I learned as well. So, because I don't know, I wouldn't imagine that some guys in a boxing gym are also pros, or like a gym that I would go to. Like, it wouldn't be in my mind that somebody was pro at one time and actually fought, just sitting there, in the same gym as I am, hitting the heavy bag or whatever. But that's a legitimate thing. Like, there's no pro versus gyms for regular dudes, right? When it comes to boxing. So
no, gym is one size fit all. That's the funniest part. That's what when we talk about boxing, it's unique unlike anything else. There's no rhyme or reason with boxing. It's just boxing. You have the gym is open to the pros, but also when the pro's not there, you got everybody training there. That's just how it goes. Now, I like how he mentioned you learn from everyone else's mistakes. That's a good thing. We see, I'll give you an example. Shakur Stevenson and Adrian Broner. You can see where one guy is learning from someone else's mistakes, seeing where one guy's off the deep end and one guy's pretty level-headed and grounded and focused on the boxing as a whole. You don't hear a lot of things about Shakur Stevenson out there in the streets. You don't hear about him being outside or causing any problems or any legal issues. We see Adrian Broner. Adrian Broner was all these guys as OG because he came up a while ago. He's all these guys as OG. He's the guy people looked up to because at one time he was one of the faces of the sport, of the new era, and we saw how that ended. So I like how you learn from people's mistakes. Unfortunately, there's mistakes to learn from. It happens that way. But yeah, it's fairly interesting for sure.
Yeah, especially since another thing with boxing that, these are sometimes literal children, getting into the sport and training. You have to be, really, because it's a young man's game. And if you don't have somebody to guide you, not just on how to throw a punch, on how to move your feet, there's all of these aspects. Something we talked about with both of these fighters that I interviewed too is like careers end outside of the ring all the time. Kind of what you said. People get in trouble, they get in legal trouble, they're not focused. And it's just crazy. I mean, I kind of feel like here's a question for you, because I only ever follow boxing. I've only ever cared about boxing. Mm-hmm. Does boxing have like a history of more notoriously fighters getting into trouble outside the ring than NFL or NBA does? I don't know the difference.
Except a lot of boxers train here. Okay. So when you're training here, living here, there's a lot of temptation in Vegas, especially when, let's say you train 4 hours out the day. It's hypothetically speaking. Mm-hmm. Let's say you do your ring stuff, do your cardio, do your weightlifting. Let's say that takes 4 or 5 hours out of your day. You got 19 or 20 hours still left in Las Vegas. You got pretty women, you got gambling, you got food, you got drugs if you partake. Everything is here for you every day. So Terrence Crawford training in Nebraska makes a lot of sense because, hey, Not a lot of distractions there outside of family. Not a whole lot going on out that way. But in Vegas, which most guys are hanging out at, there's a lot of distraction here, a lot of temptation, especially for younger guys that have never been out here like that. When you move out here from wherever you're from, it's a huge culture shock. It's a huge, basically somebody spilling water on you, and you have no idea where it came from. Now you got to try to regroup and figure out everything's on the fly. It ain't for everybody. It don't work out for everybody, but some people it does. Because also think of it like this too: if you're out here, you probably got a little coin on you, probably made a little money, so you're able to enjoy the things you never have wherever you're from. So that's why I always ask that question, because it's very hard staying focused, especially once you got a little bit of money on you.
That's a really, really good point. I mean, here's the thing: you could be broke in Vegas and just, be only live at the gym, because what else are you gonna do? But
Right.
if it's never been a cheap city, and I'm sure it's way less cheap now to live in, train in, get around. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of I would imagine, as a fighter training in Vegas with its history, and it's just a super cool thing. It's like you're kind of like being in the big leagues. You know what I mean, for a
Yep.
fighter who's training in Vegas,
Yep.
but if you are a person who can make it to the big leagues and you get there, then how about this? Hey, there's a reason that, like, I only did a little bit of boxing for fun, because I would never be dedicated enough to live in Vegas. I can't live in Vegas just now as a 39-year-old man, who has a
Well, you
decent
should
job.
recognize that. Like, here's the thing: everybody's camps are different. So back in the day, people trained in Big Bear. Big Bear was a big place where a lot of
Okay.
boxers trained there for various reasons, get out the way of everything. But Vegas at the time, Vegas was very inexpensive. So you can rent a house out for a very low price. Cost of living was very low. And on the outskirts of Vegas, it's pretty quiet. But now it's a little bit different. It's not so inexpensive. A lot of things have changed. So I get a lot of sides of it, but yeah, things have definitely changed over the years.
Okay, so, and taking my original question, of course, you live in Vegas, you see a lot of fighters in Vegas, but as a whole, do you see boxers as being more boxers getting into trouble versus NBA players, or football players, or about the
So
same?
no, because most NBA guys are kind of like socially awkward, so they do their stuff outside. You don't really see them outside like that. They'll be ducked off somewhere. They don't really do a whole lot. Like I said, boxers, and even boxers, like most people. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. Leon Love, who was on everybody's undercard for like 10 years in a row. Like, he was always on a Floyd undercard, or a PBC like first fight of the TV part of the card. He was after the 3 p.m. fights, but he wasn't so much towards the main fights. But he would be always around. Like, you see him at the casino, you see him at Costco, take out food, wherever. So it was just, you just see him now. You didn't really see him out and about partying, but you saw him out and about in general. I think now it's a lot different because of social media, and also the younger people aren't necessarily out and about like that. Like, the younger generation is not the same as our generation. Our generation, because remember, our generation heard how great Vegas was from our parents and our people. So it was like a thing to, like, hey, I can't wait till I get 21, 22. I'm going to go to Vegas and go crazy. This younger generation don't act like that. So it's kind of different now. But with that being said, your temptations are still here, no matter if, whatever vice you have, it will get exploited here.
Okay, so are you saying that Vegas is for the old heads now? Is that where we are?
When I mean old heads, I mean over 30.
That's what I mean. You and me, old heads. I mean you and
Yeah,
me.
I would say the over 28 crowd for sure.
That's so interesting. Yeah, and again, there's a lot of things that I'm learning about boxing and boxing culture that I never really learned before the show, because I always said I only care about what happens in the ring, like when the bell rings, everything else going on, deals, press conference. I've never cared
Yeah.
about any of that, but the culture of where you train is so important for fighters. That's just wild to me. Learning this now after watching boxing for as long as I've been
Well,
alive, almost.
well, Luis, think of it like this: how many times has a fighter got beat, and in the press conference, the corner and the trainer's like, "We should have had a better camp. We should have had a better camp. We should have taken camp more seriously. We started camp too late. There's too many breaks in camp, too many distractions in camp." Happens often. Like, whenever somebody loses the fight they shouldn't lose, that's like the first excuse they have. Like, unless they're hurt, but our camp wasn't as great as it should have been, or we could have had a better camp. And that all that is intertwined. However, you can have a great camp here in Vegas. You can do your job and be ready for fight night. That is not an excuse. It just comes down to the strong will of the person and also the person has to remain focused.
Yeah, one of my interviews, Jahan Ingram, he trained out of Vegas. Now he actually fights out of Arizona, but he said he's a country boy, so he doesn't go out like that. He does country things. He likes fishing, kind of things like that. So kind of how he keeps his focus. And then Daniel Bailey's from Miami, kind of the same thing. That's Miami. I always say a lot of hot lights, a lot of hot nights, but his take on it was, you grew up here, you just see like a celebrity. He said Lil Wayne is just walking down the street. You're like, oh, that's Lil Wayne. Oh. Mm-hmm. So that kind of was, you see, beautiful ladies everywhere, but it's just kind of what your life is. So it's a really, really interesting take from these guys who, I admire fighters in so many ways, but I always wonder for their next interview, I got to ask somebody like, when you're that focused, you live at the gym, like, do you feel like you're missing out on partying on the weekends, having a nice, so a bunch of fried chicken, some steak, whatever. Because when I was
whatever your vice is, right? Because some people are big on sweets.
Mm-hmm.
Some people really crave sweets and like cheesecake and cookies and brownies, etc. Some people are addicted to carbs. Some people love pasta, Italian food, Chinese food. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I was working out 6 days a week, a couple hours in the gym, but I was doing it so I could stuff my fat face and get hammered on the weekends. You know what I mean? Uh-huh. So, but that's just it's just so different. And that mindset of, I can't really overdo it. Even 1 day a week, cheat days are not really that much of a thing. It's just amazing. It's just like an amazing mindset that fighters have. They're almost like space aliens to me. My God, with how different they are. But yeah, so please, y'all, couple of great interviews. I think did about 20, 25 minutes or so with each guy. So doesn't take up a lot of your time. Millions.co, find the Mixed Company podcast there, or go to our YouTube channel. Our YouTube playlist on the 19 Media Group channel to check those out. So, yeah. And one thing, just another thing that I just want to mention is, we don't have to get into a whole thing, but Teofimo Lopez and Shakur Stevenson are supposed to fight at the beginning of 2026. The Teofimo saying crap like, well, it's still marinating. It's still like we're figuring it out. This fight, of all the people, this fight better not get canceled. God damn it! I'd be so pissed.
I'm getting tired of him, man. I'm getting tired because he's the one that can make. He's the one that can make the fight. Shakur Stevenson is taking a lot of concessions with a lot of guys when it comes to fights recently and negotiations and whatnot. Tired of hearing this. I'm tired of the whole excuses. Either you want the fight or you don't. At the end of the day, let's cut the nonsense out. Let's cut the posturing out. Let's cut the tweets and all that out. Either you want the fight or you don't. If you don't want it, it's okay. We need to move on to people who actually want the fight.
Yes, Teo is the A side. Shakur is the B side. So yes, Shakur. I feel that Shakur is more serious about it. I mean, obviously, Teofimo Lopez is a great fighter. He is a very skilled, talented fighter. Period. Return, new paragraph. I'm not gonna knock that there. But I feel that he also doesn't take the sport that seriously. He takes this, training and fighting, but the sport as a whole, I guess I could say maybe his responsibility as one of the stars of the sport, one of the faces, one of the big names. Like, that means you got to get your ass out there and get in the ring with guys. Like, there's no other things that you do as a boxer. Like, you do social media and stuff like that to promote your fights.
Right.
We'll be talking about another fighter that a little later that got into the weeds doing all kinds of other crazy shit, but that's later this in this episode. But yeah, I agree. I'm kidding. I'm getting a little tired. Sometimes he's funny. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes Teofimo makes me laugh, and sometimes I'm like, bro, shut your goddamn mouth. Shut your mouth and get in the ring. So I just hate the dilly dallying it back and forth. Pick a date. I'm not saying that coming to an agreement to a contract is easy. Another thing I don't know anything about when it comes to being a pro fighter, but it's
easy enough.
I feel like they make it harder than it needs to be, is my take.
Exactly. And I'll put it this way. When it comes to contracts, majority of the framework is already agreed upon. We're arguing over little things that don't need to be argued about at this point. We want to see the fight. November is next week. At that point, we have about 60-ish days left in the year. Once December 10th or 13th comes around, the last 2 weeks of the year, no one's checking for nothing anyway. So we really got about 6 more weeks in this year, and then once the first week of January comes, we're on to a new year. So we need to figure something out sooner than later. We don't need this drug. It's been going on for a whole year, basically. This whole tug and pull has been going on for this whole calendar year. It's a waste of time. We need fights. We need anticipation going into the next year. We need that as a sport. It has to happen. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's going to be the end of the year like that. We're going to be talking. We're going to be making Christmas plans like that. So and this year, well, of course, we'll do a sort of a end of year review. But I feel like this year had just a lot of dilly dallying back and forth about lots of fights. Like Canelo Crawford was kind of sucked the air out of the room. But if you look back, I mean, it was always stop and start with this tail specifically. Supposedly maybe ran blah blah blah. And man, I don't want to get down on the sport because I love it so much. But that's kind of why I've been doing a lot of checking out different places that have different fights. We talked about overtime boxing recently. I just want to see fights. I want to see talented people get into the damn ring, and I kind of relying on the bigger names to get off the damn couch and do their jobs. So anyway, another thing that's a little bit maybe frustrating and kind of disconcerting about the boxing world. I'm gonna have a bit of a longer conversation here about Dana White and his role in the boxing world. We talked about a little bit. Some things have been going on with him trying to get into the boxing world, but his way and the Saudis' way. So let's see. Let's start here. So Dana White has a company called Zuffa Boxing, ZUFFA. That's owned by TKO Holdings. TKO also owns UFC, WWE, and it's backed by the Saudis.
Right.
So big money, big deal. These are serious people. This is serious money that is getting involved in boxing. But apparently, Dana White doesn't just want to jump in, throw his hat into the ring, pun intended. His plan, this whole, I guess what you call enterprise's plan, is to do it by changing the safeguards, legal safeguards, federal safeguards in boxing, specifically under the Muhammad Ali Act of 2000. So this is going to drive me crazy because I've been reading a lot about this. There's a lot of back and forth. The Muhammad Ali Act, it was created to protect the rights of boxers. Okay. Yep. It was intended to reduce corruption. There's a lot of things that it does, get into some details, but it's not perfect. Boxing has never been perfect. Boxing has basically been probably one of the most corrupt sports ever, but it's something, and some things, whether they're not enforceable, they're good ideas, right? Dana White and his, cohorts, they're very heavily involved with politics, with this administration specifically. There is a Muhammad Ali Revival Act, which actually tries to gut a lot of these protections. And I'm not very happy about it. There's a lot of people in the sport not very happy about it either. I just wanted to get your take before we get into the weeds, Jamieson, of where we stand right now with this.
So ironically, I've said often on our show that Floyd Mayweather ruined boxing. Well, he also helped boxing a lot as well, meaning that fighters were able to get paid their fair share. They're able to make they're able to make a profit on their skill set. Some fighters got paid more than they probably should have, but hey, that's what the sport was due to Floyd. Floyd drove the money up, similar to how Tiger Woods drove it up in golf and other athletes in other sports. With that being said, they're trying to ruin that now. They are trying to tear all that down. Whenever you have people from outside trying to come in, it's basically like a private equity firm coming in and trying to take over, get involved. They have no concern for the sport itself or the boxers itself. They're trying to maximize the value of each and every fight, and whatever happens to the fighters, if happens. The issue with the UFC, the reason why we don't know a lot of the stars, because they don't get paid that much. Dana White and UFC takes a lot of the money. They control a lot of the money. Boxing isn't like that. If they're trying to get boxing to get like UFC, it will not work. It will not work. That's not what we're here for, and it shouldn't be like that. However, we are trending that way, and until boxers step up and speak out, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know.
I got some actual stats here for you to get a reaction from you. In UFC specifically, the athletes usually have about 18% of the revenue share. Okay, boxers can be as high as 80%.
Right.
Here's another thing: UFC fighters, they cannot have personal sponsorship deals. They're not
Mhm.
allowed. Boxers can, of course, they can, they can put whoever they want on their boxing trunks. And
Right.
Canelo's out here doing. I saw Canelo doing a commercial for that Lord of the Rings TV show for Amazon in Spanish. Like I guess to promote it in Mexico or something, which is kind of ridiculous, but makes sense. Huge Mexican celebrity. But yeah, I mean, like you said, it's top down with UFC. Dana White is the top of the chain, and most of the money goes there. Here's the thing: you don't go into boxing and wanting to impose your own model that's in a very different sport, completely different to ways it up. MMA, mixed martial arts, is the style of fighting. UFC is the promotional company. Like people just say UFC because that's like I think it has 90% market share in MMA, right?
Right.
Because who the hell else? I wouldn't even know any other promotional company for mixed martial arts. I don't know if you have ever heard of one. No?
Same.
Yeah. So, they're the big game, and here's the thing. I'll even go ahead and be generous and say, Dana White, credit to you for, doing this and setting up the UFC in your own way to benefit you, because you're the big guy. You're the big man on campus.
Mhm.
You can't do that shit at boxing just because you're friendly with whatever administration is currently in power at any given time. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you can't do it because you're also had connections with the Saudis and you want to completely change these regulations. That here's the thing: boxing is so corrupt. The federal government had to get involved and say, "We're the feds, and we think this is fucked up."
Right.
Yeah. So
No, it's not a good. It's not a good idea though. It's not. There's other ways things can be done, but that ain't it.
Right. Do you know what a big reason for the Ali Act was in the 90s, Jamieson, that we've talked about before on the show?
Well, a lot of guys getting their money took by the promoters. A lot of guys end up broke. Unfortunately, Ali was one of them. But Mike Tyson had to take Don King to court a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of boxers that have complained of foul play from the promoters, and the two biggest promoters were Don King and Bob Arum. So there you go.
Yeah, the one major thing that I like. Here's the thing: there's a lot of aspects of the Ali Act that I never knew about. One thing that I always knew was that it keeps distance between the promoter and the manager. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Can't be the same guy, because that was Don King's issue. Is that his nephew? He was the promoter. His nephew was the manager, and they had to sign with both guys. So that was shady. That's how a lot of dudes are getting their money taken. And
also, for those that are out there who ever get a little bit of money, never have your manager and the agent be rep by the same company. It doesn't work out well, or the agent and the finance company be in the same office. Oh, no.
Yeah. So that's one very specific thing. And here's the thing: people have still try to get away with that shit. Try to do shady deals of just like, oh, I'm your manager, this promoter, I'm not connected. He's just my buddy that I've known for, since we were kids, or here's my neighbor or whatever,
Oh.
They try to skirt it already, even though the LA Act is a good idea.
It's a very good idea. And we don't need deregulation in terms of sports. We don't need that. We need the rules to say the rules. There's no need to loosen them up. No need for change. I think we should keep things as they are and go from there.
Agreed. And here's the problem. I don't think the very real issues with the LDI, because it's not perfect, is that, enforcing is difficult, etc. The way to fix those issues is not more deregulation. It's to find better ways to address those problems. Right. I don't think anybody serious, anybody who really cares about boxing as a sport, the safety of the fighters, the welfare, and them not being taken advantage of, I don't think anybody really who really cares about that has an issue with the provisions in the Ali Act. I think it's the same bullshit that we hear all the time from the government of, well, this is going to help competition, this is going to help innovation, this is going to help it's just helping to help make more money. Let's call it what it is. Okay. Right. So that's my biggest issue with it. There's no real need for it. It's just likely to happen because we got the people with the money, with the right connections, who have the ability to push this through. So now the Ali Revival Act, which is the new crappy one, it is not currently passed through Congress. It has to be passed House, Senate, be signed by the president. Okay, that has not happened. I don't see that happening probably this year. With we don't even have a government right now as of this recording, as of this show in October of 2025. At the moment, we don't have one. So But here's the thing, there's plenty of time, and I feel like it's just a matter of time if more fighters don't speak out, more people involved. Hell, there was a time in 2016 when a Mark Wade Mullen, I don't remember if he was a senator. I don't remember if he's a senator or a representative, but he's a former MMA fighter. He tried to apply the Ali Act, not just to boxing, to UFC, and UFC lost their goddamn minds. Like they threw a fit. Randy Couture, an MMA star, was trying to speak up against it, and UFC were like, we don't want this guy involved in any of the talks because they know that he's for the fighters because he's a former fighter himself.
Right.
So this is a shit show. I mean, they're trying to spin this as like, now I will say the way they're trying to package this is that it's good for the fighters and gives them freedom to choose, where and how they compete. They actually have, I got this here, a minimum pay of $150 per round, which some states have less, some states don't even have minimum. So, okay, like that's cool. And that's a good idea on paper, but it can't come with all of these other, gutting of the LEX. So, but
that doesn't help the guys we know. That only helps the guys that fight in the small fights in small towns. That doesn't help anyone fight that's fighting on TV or fighting on stream. 150 around doesn't help anything.
And here's the thing: you can always just make that change. You can always just make a specific change to the minimum pay per round. That's perfectly fine. There's this stuff in there.
You don't want a minimum pay per round because what will happen is the guy that's beating up the guy that's just trying to hang around. Now you have fights that are boring. There should still be a flat fee. If someone's giving you $20,000 for the fight, then that's your cut. You get $100,000 for the fight, then that's your cut. Once you start having minimums on rounds, things get tricky. Things get weird. Now we start overanalyzing things. We've been just fine without that. We don't need that. We don't need it.
That's fair. I've never had an issue with minimum wage period for anything, but I can see your side of it. I think also what people can do is innovate. We talked a few episodes ago about overtime sports. They have things like knockout bonuses. And then they have knockout bonuses for the first and the last round. So fights start exciting and then end exciting.
I think you have a knockout bonus in general. Just have that as a part of the pot. I think that would make for a lot more interesting fights. But also, like, here's the thing too: if you knock somebody out within the first 4 rounds, your bonus is higher. So let's say the bonus is $20,000. If you knock somebody out in the first 4 rounds, it's $50,000. You know what I mean? I think those are things where we can enhance the excitement, but honestly, Luis, we just want to see good fights. At the end of the day, we want to see good fights that don't have any BS to them. That's all. I think that's all we really want. Whatever it takes to get there, we'll deal with. We just don't want no shenanigans. I think that's the biggest thing out of everything.
Sure, and like I said earlier, I love this sport more than most things in the world, and I don't believe that Dana White has the integrity of the sport in mind. You say what you will about the Saudis, coming in with money and trying to getting into to a lot of different things, sports and concerts and comedy shows to kind of offset their human rights abuses. But what Turki Al-Sheikh did is he was putting together big fights, and he was giving people, putting people together. It took a lot of extra money. I believe he did say that Canelo Crawford had a knockout bonus as well. Not that even though those dudes need the damn money, especially, even after the actual payment they were going to get from the fight, but things can be done to make better. This is not it. Let me give you some more, get your thoughts on another specific thing that this new act is trying to do. So they're trying to create what's called UBOs, Unified Boxing Organizations. So they're alternative from the sanctioning bodies. So they have their own rankings, their own belt, and there's not as many regulations. Now, we've already talked about the sanctioning bodies, the commissions, WBO, WBC. They have their issues. But is this really going to be a benefit to have a completely separate little linear top-down organization?
No, it won't. Like, the more people you have in the kitchen, the worse it gets. We need a boxing commissioner that oversees everything, that get people on the same page, or at least get some sort of organization. Right now, every federation has its own rules. Everybody's kind of flying by the seat of their pants. Everything's a freestyle. I'm not a big fan of that. I think that the sport deserves more organization. I think that there's too much money involved for it to be this scattered. However, some of the money might not be on the up and up. So maybe we're opening up a can of worms we don't need to open up. I don't know. But it feels like boxing is just so unorganized, and the overall direction of it just no one knows because there's no set plan. There's no set direction. So it just feels like we're all just kind of waiting to see what the next announcement is instead of, oh, okay, it's November. We know this, and that's happening. It's in a really weird spot right now.
Yeah, and if you go back to a couple episodes ago, right before the Canelo Crawford fight, we spoke to legendary sports commentator Al Bernstein. He was talking about how it's the way he described it is how boxing is. If you have the United States without a federal government with any rules, that's kind of how boxing is. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing, this and that. But like, I think this would be worse because you're not just kind of trying to regulate it in terms of fighter protection, whatever, fairness, etc. You're just kind of like setting up one dude at the top to do whatever the hell he wants with no real like oversight and just make their own rules and have the money flow however they want it. And I think that's part of the actual problem that the problems that we have now in boxing. That's more of that problem, just in a different way, I think. So, I don't know.
Nah, it's not good, man. You don't want. At the end of the day, boxers, for what they do to their bodies and for what they do to put on a show whenever they perform, they should be in control of where the money goes, what goes on with the money, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, and here's the thing: we talked about Randy Couture being, a big star in MMA and UFC. Kind of broke out of that. But for somebody who did not follow UFC, like I learned who he was because he was in that first Expendables movie as one of the dudes. It was like they had Sly Stallone and like Dolph Lundgren, and then Randy Couture. I'm like, oh, I guess he must be a big deal in UFC. But that's like none of these guys, like you said, are able to go mainstream. The other guy I know is Francis Ngannou because he actually beat Tyson Fury in a fight and got robbed by that decision.
Sure did.
Absolutely, 100%. Justice for Francis Ngannou, goddammit. But anyway, yeah, I mean, this is sorry, I don't mean to be kind of rambly, but there's just so many ins and outs of this, this attempt to gut this act that it's not going to be good. We can say this. I can say this in a more concise way: is that gutting the Muhammad Ali Act, the Ali Revival Act, would be bad for the sport. Having Dana White take his UFC model and apply it to boxing would be bad for the sport. Now, I know that there are boxers out there who would love to have an opportunity. Dana White is a name. He's we talked before how much we had, like $7 billion for UFC on Paramount Plus. They also tossed a few bucks to Zuffa Boxing, so we will have fights on there as well. That's cool. At the end of the day, credit where credit is due. Let's have more fights available, people to watch.
Right.
More fights for young fighters like the dudes I interviewed in Millions to get their names out there. I'm sure being told you're going to sign with this guy who's the biggest deal in the world in combat sports, and he's going to get you on in a ring on a TV, like that's exciting. I wouldn't fault anybody for thinking that it's a good idea to sign with Dana White. Let's be very clear about that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, one of the final things I wanted to say on this is, I got a quote here. Luke Thomas, co-host of the show Morning Combat, he said, "What does it say about a law's ability to prevent monopoly if a monopoly from another industry won't enter the space until they can get the rules helping to prevent the monopoly over time?"
Right.
And that's what it is. I mean, you want to get into boxing, Dana? Cool. Join the group here. Don't say I have to do it my way because that's the only way I'm gonna invest in the sport. I think that's bullshit, to be honest.
Right.
What's your take on that? And whether, how about this? If Dana White cannot get this act revoked or at least gutted or whatever it is, can we expect to still see him in the boxing world?
He's going to hang around because he deals with Turkey, so he's going to hang around. But he's going to try every which way to make money off the fight. And it's only going to be the big fights. It's not going to be the small ones. It's only going to be the big fights. He ain't going to be on the ones that are only on DAZN only. That ain't going to happen. He's not here for that. He's not. So he's going to be around. I just don't think it's going to get done. I think boxers have been too satisfied in the wages that they've made, and they don't want to go away from that. I don't think they want to go away from that. And things are already weird now with how many times they fight a year. So yeah, I don't see anything changing per se. But yeah, I don't see Dana White being able to bully himself into boxing. I don't see it.
Okay. And yeah, a lot of the people in boxing like the way it is, and Oscar De La Hoya has spoken out against Dana White, but Oscar's not fighting anymore. Like we're talking about young guys who want to make a name for themselves, and Dana White is a known property. I'm more kind of worried about that. Is that you're kind of taking the guys who have a lot of going for them, get them into the system where they signing these contracts that are going to screw them over, not going to make the money that they should be making, and we already have a problem not just with people fighting as often or infrequently. We also have a problem with young guys trying to make a name for themselves and getting out there. We talked about how social media is essential to. I think it's essential as a pair of boxing gloves for young guys these days because there's so many names out there and it's hard to break through. So are we going to have, a bunch of Dana White, Zuffa boxers that are like UFC guys that nobody's heard of, that the general, public doesn't know by name?
No,
that sucks. You don't think so?
Not going to happen. No.
Yeah. I think that's the worry. And that's what I really hope, I have no problem with Dana getting his mitts into professional boxing. That's not what I'm saying here. But to do it with all of this baggage and all of the Saudi money trying to do this specifically to this act, I think that's bad for the sport. And I really think that this should not be passing through Congress. So that's my take. Anyway, any other thoughts on this before we?
No, we're good.
We're good. Yeah, let's. That's Luis's rant for the day. Bing. All right, let's move on to speaking of fighters that have made their name in the mainstream that are well known by most people, even if they don't follow boxing. Let's get into Manny Pacquiao. We are going to talk about our recurring segment, Pop Pugilism, in which we discuss a movie or TV show about boxing. And as always, this segment is sponsored by our friends at the Bad Movies, Worst People podcast. And they actually sent us another custom ad here from my buddy Jack.
I'd like to make a confession to the people. I've been on a Bad Movies podcast too long. I have now started to enjoy things like Steel and Catwoman and have no time for things like Superman from 1978, often known as a masterpiece. And here I am looking forward to watching Daredevil someday, and maybe even, God willing, Elektra. And I'd like to just say sorry for my behavior. Thank you, badmoviesworstpeople.com.
Thanks, Jack. badmoviesworstpeople.com. Check them out wherever you get your podcast. So today we're talking about a documentary from 2014 called Manny, about, of course, none other than Manny Pacquiao, one of the greatest fighters of all time. Oops, my bad. One of the greatest fighters of all time. Jamieson, what did you think of this documentary? Let's get some initial thoughts from you before we get into
So I forgot how big of a star he actually was, like watching the whole thing. Obviously, I knew how big he was, but he was an actual superstar in this country. And it's very rare for a non-American to be a superstar in this country. So it's very rare. It's not impossible, but it's very rare. In his prime, he was must-watch TV. He was loved by a lot of fans, casual and fanatics. He was different. Hell of a prime, hell of a run. It made me go back. I remember he fought Morales a few times in like the mid 2000s. It was like a big fight, like a big deal. And I also didn't realize that obviously he's Filipino. Whenever a boxer's from a country like that, the whole country gravitates towards that boxer. And yeah, man, Pacquiao was, for the superstar we had in this country, he was much bigger overseas as well. And he was good. Put on a show a lot of times. It's interesting that people gravitated towards him because Floyd would go the distance in his fights. Pacquiao would get people out of here quick. So, like, you think of how he fought Oscar. Basically got Oscar out of here. Floyd didn't. Fought Ricky Hatton. He got Ricky Hatton out of here quickly. Floyd didn't. So a lot around that time, it was known like, hey, Pacquiao's the much easier watch per se. But it was all in all, it was really good. Really good doc.
Yeah, I definitely like the Pacquiao Mayweather era is like the time that I can last remember is when a boxer kind of broke out of just being known by boxing fans. I feel like everybody knew who the hell both of these guys
Right,
were.
right.
And I feel like they knew it, even if they've never seen a match. I think that's kind of the last time that's happened. I don't know that a lot of people know Canelo even if they've never seen a boxing match. A lot of outside of Mexicans. I don't know what you think.
People have heard his name for so long that they know of him, but it's not the same superstar feel. Pacquiao felt like a superstar. Canelo is one, but it don't feel that way, if that makes sense. Not in the same way Pacquiao was. Pacquiao was a superstar, and it felt that. I mean, hell, Pacquiao had a Nike deal, all kinds. Yeah, it was different. It was way, way different.
Yeah, and gotta give credit to him. I'm Mexican American, but that Manny Pacquiao was the executioner, one guy after another. He Mexican boxing star got knocked down, knocked out, beaten by Manny, and here's the thing: Mexicans liked it too. They still tuned in to watch their favorites get pummeled by Manny.
His fighting style. They loved his fighting style. However, we know what happened. The one Mexican he could not get by.
Juan Manuel Marquez, yeah, but it took till the fourth fight because I don't think
did. There's a lot of questionable things that happened, a lot of questionable decisions and whatnot. When you go back and watch those fights, a lot of questionable things that took place, but neither here nor there.
Sure, if I remember correctly, and they did mention in the documentary, but my brain is mushy, is mushy by the. But I think Manny won all three fights, but definitely at least one was a very, very controversial decision. Maybe the third one, it was one of those like, hey, are we looking at the same thing here? You could say, well, maybe he should have won this round, or that round. I believe the vibe around number 3 was Manny did not win that fight. That was a gift decision.
That is correct. That's why they ran it back so quickly. Yes.
Yeah, and this documentary starts with the famous knockout, which is wild, and it ends. It starts and ends. It's bookended by that fight. It's also hilarious that near the end, this isn't a spoiler because it's the man's life, but right at the very end, they close out the documentary with the Marquez 4 fight and the classic punch that gets Manny on the chin plays, and they play some some little footage here of when he was younger. That shot, boom, plays again. Brah. Go to the foot. Brah. But I think like 4 times I'm sorry. I was cackling. I was like, man, this is Manny's documentary. Why are you ending with him getting slept 4 times in a row? That was fun. But so here's another crazy thing that it didn't really. Again, we're old heads. We're washed, and you think back at all this time that we all the things that we know and learned about boxing so far. This documentary is from 2014, and the Mayweather back and forth, is this fight going to happen? The fights in the media, the arguments in the media, that's a part of it. But the fight itself happened in 2015, so it's not a part of this documentary. So it was wild to see this because we just think back. I'm like, yeah, they fought like around this time, where this was at. But no, we are seeing a picture of what it was like before that, and it reminded me like it took forever to make that fight. There was some back and forth about this is not doing the drug test, there's cheating here, blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. You sit down and watch this in theaters at the time, you still might not know if that fight is happening. I don't know exactly when it was announced, so that was wild to me because it's just a thing that we just know, like Mayweather and Pacquiao fought, and that's that. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like
it was so the first JMM fight was a draw. So it was a draw, 2 questionable decisions, and then the infamous knockout. Yes. So that's what made it. Yeah, that's why you got 4. If you beat guy 3 times in a row, you're not getting a 4th one. That's not happening. But the middle 2 were so highly contested, they had to fight again.
That's a really good point as well. Yeah, it's wild that you never see so and so, the 4th, so and so versus so and so the 4th fight. Like it's all trilogies. Everybody's trilogies obsessed. I blame Lord of the Rings. I blame Star Wars. Even with movies, everybody has to make a trilogy. I'm like, you can just make 2 or 4 things. That's fine.
Right.
Like I bought a box set with like 7 Nightmare on Elm Streets. Like, don't worry about a trilogy, but whatever. But
Timothy Bradley did not win that fight, by the way. Timothy Bradley did not beat him.
That's right.
I remember it in due time. I remember it real time. Timothy Bradley did not win that fight.
Yes, that's in here as well. And they did bring up the fact that Timothy Bradley won by decision. I think. Oh, it was split decision. Yeah, not unanimous, but still.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Manny, as great as he was, he was not. It's never not been a thing where somebody can look at a fight and go robbery.
Right.
And
Right.
I don't know enough to say why it was or what happened or what's going on behind the scenes, but it is just a thing that's always going to be a thing in boxing. There was you remember when there was some hubbub that we even talked about in the show. I don't know if it was early this year or last year when they were talking about AI judges because that was going to fix boxing. And it won't.
Nope, that's even worse. Nope.
Yeah, no, that's a terrible idea.
Nope.
Never use AI judges. That's so stupid.
Nope.
But it feels like now, like what happened to that? Like people were like wouldn't shut up about AI scoring, AI judges. Maybe there's one fight that's actually going to be have the AI judges be like binding, and now
no,
just went out the window. I guess everybody realized that people just wanted AI for porn, and that kind of went out. Everything else went out the window. Hey man, let's be real. That's what are these guys talking about? They got AI girlfriends now, and they talk to the robot like they're their boyfriends or girlfriends. That's what it's all about.
That's scary.
It is very scary, yes. But at the end of the day, I'd rather people use it for that, which is what they really wanted, than to bring it into all these other places.
True. I mean, with boxing, you need the human element in there. You need someone to be able to dictate how a fight is scored and judged. So yeah, we can't take that away.
Yeah, but bringing it back to Manny Pacquiao. Another thing that I learned about him is just how he had his fingers in all these other pies, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
He was a politician in the Philippines that I knew about him,
Mhm.
but I didn't know that he attempted a singing career, that he was in terrible action movies. I talk a lot about how fighters get high on their own supply and they're trying to do all this other stuff and they get a little taste of fame. Because another thing they show is that just how he grew up in like poverty. Like that man grew up hungry as a child.
Right.
Like so you become a superstar, make a lot of money. You think, well, I can do absolutely anything. Mm-hmm. And when you have enough money, there's not enough people around you to tell you, no, don't do that.
That is correct.
So that was wild to me, kind of seeing all the other stuff he did apart from being. But I knew boxing and politician, and that's all I knew that he was involved in. But yeah, he was doing like music videos. Like it was actual footage of him in the recording studio trying to sing. Like I can't sing for crap, and I can say, man,
you played try to play basketball.
That's right. They didn't bring that in the movie, but I remember that seeing that as well.
It's the reason why they didn't. It's the reason why. It's the reason why they didn't bring that shit up.
Okay,
trash.
so
he's trash. That's why.
Okay, so I don't follow basketball. You're the basketball fan. Then I need to know, like, how far did this get? Like, what actually?
He started his own league out there.
Okay.
Or his own team in the league or whatever. But yeah, he physically participated in basketball professional league out there in the Philippines.
Okay.
And like you said, since he was so powerful, no one's gonna say nothing.
So did that did it just fizzle out? Did he actually try to?
Yeah.
I mean, he probably lost a shitload of money on it and then just kind of.
He ain't no.
That's hilarious. No, I completely forgot about that. But I didn't know that I just didn't know what it looked like or.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, the man, for all of his faults and for all of his mismanagement of his career and money, like I said, it was a superstar. It's amazing just seeing footage of the people in the Philippines and when he fought. Like another thing I knew is that that whole place stopped. Like the Philippines just shut down during a Manny Pacquiao fight.
Yep.
It was really cool seeing footage of people watching the fights. There's conflict there with separatists and the military, blah blah blah. They said there is a ceasefire during Manny Pacquiao fights. People are not shooting.
Right.
So, just amazing. I want to ask you this because my man has been famous for I guess a couple decades. He came back recently. He's in the news, and the goal is to get as many young fans into boxing. I don't know. There's probably a lot of people that know Manny's name, maybe reputation, but if they've never actually saw him fight, maybe they heard that this old man is back this year to the Barrios fight. Do you think this documentary gives a good picture for somebody that does not know this man is just getting into boxing?
Oh, absolutely. No, I think it does a very good job of that. I think it broke down everything the way it needed to be. It's something that if you showed a non-fight fan, if you showed them that'd be very interesting and they'd do more research on him. That's how good it was. It's just, it lacked some context though. I wish it had a couple other parties to kind of dissect a little bit of some things that happened, but for the most part, it did pretty well.
I agree. I did. There was a jump scare in here when Marky Mark was one of the interviewees. Like, I know he's a boxing fan, and
Yeah,
him and Jeremy Piven. I was like,
yeah. But again, that's how popular Manny was in the mid 2000s.
That's fair. I mean, here's the thing. I kind of get why they did it. They got Marky Mark and Jeremy Piven, one racist and one sex pest, allegedly. But yeah, we don't need that. We don't need them in this. We need more
so
people.
Here's the thing, too, you got to remember. He was the anti-Mayweather. He was the guy. So if you didn't like Floyd, you like Pacquiao. So if you were not a Floyd Mayweather fan, you were a Pacquiao fan, and then you got more exciting fights and more knockouts and blah blah blah. So you had a lot of people gravitating towards Pacquiao for various reasons.
Okay, so what's the reason for that? Again, I love fights. I love watching.
We know the reason why.
Okay, that's fair. We can make it a little explicit and say some people don't want to follow a black fighter. That's fine.
Yeah.
I was wondering if there was more to it than that. I guess.
No, I ain't no more to it. You know what it is.
I get Occam Razor sometimes just works.
That's when Floyd went from Pretty Boy Floyd to Money Mayweather. And when that change happened, that pissed off a lot of white people, or a lot of people in general, but especially a lot of white people. They didn't like that everything he talked about was money, how much money he had, how much money he was getting. That turned a lot of people off, and they went toward Pacquiao, who was getting taken advantage of by Bob Arum all those years. So yeah.
But Manny wasn't white either. So like, what was the reason? I guess white boxing fans
you know the reason.
Hate black people so much.
You know the reason, man. That a black guy that's dominant and bragging about how dominant it is while making the most money athletes can make in a year, every year for like a 5-year stretch. Yeah, people are gonna feel some kind of way.
That's fair. Yeah, and I'm not arguing the point. Obviously, like, I know that there's a lot of racism and issues of race in the sport and in fandom. That's a lot of why we're the Mixed Company podcast. I was just wondering if there was just other aspects to it that maybe I missed out on. Okay. Occam's razor. Sometimes the simplest answer is the best one. Gotcha. Oh no, I mean, hey, look, both these guys are amazing fighters, and both deserve respect. Whatever, and again, whatever Floyd talked about or did outside the ring, I never gave a shit. Like, I never that just never really like entered into my mindset. I was like, before that bell rings, nothing matters to me. That's the kind of fight fan I've always been, honestly.
Right.
And that's what. That's part of why I love doing the show, is just learning so much about the culture around it, the audience reaction around it. But yeah, it was kind of wild. Like, Floyd comes up in the last, like, I don't know, 20 minutes of this document. He just pops up, and I was like, oh, there's like a special guest star in this thing. Mm-hmm. Like, because again, this was before that fight. I didn't realize that it was going to be, they're going to factor it into this documentary. But
they are tied to each other for basically a decade. From the mid 2000s to when they fought, and even beyond, they were tied to each other. I would say from 07 to 15, you couldn't hear one without the other's name being mentioned.
Yeah, and you mentioned before that fight was 10 years ago now, that it was late then. Mm-hmm. So, Brian Pacquiao was 20 years.
And the weirdest thing is this. They both fought the same guys.
That's
both
true.
Fought Oscar, both fought Mosley, both fight Cotto, if I'm not mistaken. Both fought Hatton. So it's like, yeah, that's why it was the ring around the Rosie thing was so weird, because they all end up fighting the same guys in some random order, one way or another. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess that was it was inevitable.
They both fought Marquez. Yeah.
They did both fight Marquez. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember Floyd came back from retirement to fight Marquez and pitch the shutout. That's how good he was in that fight. So yeah.
Yeah, I do remember that. So yeah, I don't know, we're this era of boxing is very fascinating. It's amazing. You got two big superstars, two faces of the sport. Again, two people that completely transcended just boxing. Like, it wasn't just sports fans, and you're right, it doesn't feel the same today. And I got to wonder, like, who are we going to ever see that again? Somebody that just so far beyond.
There's always a possibility, because a star can be born every day, any day. But whoever that person is, they're not currently boxing, if that makes sense. That person is not yet established in the sport. I don't think you can have a current guy become the guy like that it had to be somebody coming out of nowhere, becoming the guy, carrying that on, and going from there.
That's fair. I think
If Bud was 10 years younger, if Bud was 28 instead of 38, totally different discussion. If Earl Spence didn't, have alcohol and driving issues, maybe we have a different conversation. But yeah, no.
Yeah, that's very fair thing to say. I guess I'll end off on something that's completely ridiculous and wild. That we're both 39, and if we had seen, we lived through this era, and this documentary could be a way to introduce, if we had our own children to this who are old enough to get into boxing and learn about this. Because I mean, I don't know, I'm old enough to have an 18-year-old if I really think about it. I don't.
I have friends that have kids going to college or that are in college that are the same age. So you do the math.
Yeah, I'm 39. I'm just a kid still. Why would I have another kid myself?
If you had a kid at 21, they'd be 18. If you had a kid at 20, they'd be 19. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. So anyway, so for those of y'all that are washed like me and Jamieson, this is, you want to introduce your kids to Manny Pacquiao. This documentary from 2014, and we should mention, directed by Ryan Moore and Leon Gast. And Leon Gast has been on the show before because he directed the When We Were Kings documentary about Muhammad Ali that we've talked about on the show. Also, an amazing documentary that's available in the Criterion Collection. But yeah, this Manny one, available for free on Tubi with ads, so you don't have to pay for it. And it's definitely recommend if you're interested in an era of boxing that's just, how about this? An era of boxing that might come again someday, but definitely is not today.
Right.
In the last, let's say, like 10 years, this era of boxing, there's been nothing like it. So.
Right.
So on the show, we rate any films that we talk about out of 4 gloves. Jamieson, how would you rate this documentary?
I mean, it's a 4. Like, the film itself is a 4. I mean, it was done well. It explained well. It aged well also. Something that was done 10 plus years ago. I would give it a full 4 just by all the things that took place. It fit the need for what it was, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There's actually, I realized after I picked this one, there's another documentary. I think it's called Manny Pacquiao Unstoppable Force. I'm just going to watch it for fun, just to see. I mean, I'm sure there's probably a lot of stuff that's going to be repeated, but yeah, it just makes me want to learn even more about this guy that we all know a lot about. So I'm gonna go 3.75 because I cannot get over the Marky Mark jump scare in this movie and the Jeremy Piven jump scare with like fake hair, because we know that man was bald until he figured that out upstairs with the hair plugins. But so 3.75, but very good documentary. Just fast forward to when Marky Mark is talking, you'll be fine. All right, Jamieson, where can people find you on social media?
At Twitter, at the Jamieson.
Excellent. You can follow the show on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Mixco Podcasts. Subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. Leave us a 5-star review. It only takes a minute and helps us out more than you could possibly imagine. Watch us on YouTube. Watch our handsome mugs. The link is on the show notes, or find our playlist on the 19 Media Group channel. Don't forget, we're also on millions.co with exclusive interviews with professional fighters, hopefully with more to come. And we have an official show email address if you have any questions for the mailbag, fun stories about watching boxing in mixed company, or hate mail if you're a Marky Mark fan. Send it all to letters@mixcopodcast.com. Don't forget, we drop new episodes every other Thursday. So please join us on November 6th for Mas Fuego from the Boxing World. We have been the Mixed Company Podcast, a 19 Media Group production. Thanks so much for listening, and salud.
Salud.